thing. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm more willing to give the Steelers the benefit of the doubt than the Cleveland Browns. You can call me lazy in that take. That's fine. I'll believe it when I see it.
All right. I will take it a step further than RC did. You could put the Browns helmet under my face, or under my name, I should say, and I'll say this. There is every reason to believe the Browns should be better this year than they were a year ago, so I'll take it this step farther. I believe the Browns are the single biggest threat to Kansas City in the AFC going into this season, and that's inclusive of Buffalo and absolutely everybody else. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. What do you think, RC?
Hey, I'm with you, Greeny. Remember early on in this offseason, I took a lot of heat.
10 seconds.
Number 2 in the AFC, and they've just gotten better since. Great mind think alike, Greeny, and like you said, we will not be appreciated until we are gone.
You know what's interesting is Jeff Darlington, who we've had him on before. I like him. He's a nice job. But sometimes you get on these shows, and he said, I'll believe it when I see it. I guess he didn't watch the end of the season or the playoff game.
Yeah.
Did those things not happen?
You can say that.
I mean, I felt like, did you broadcast that game, Gibby? I felt like you produced the broadcast of those two games, including a playoff game, at Heinz Field.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not making that up, right? That did happen?
That happened. That happened.
Okay.
Like, if it had been a high school game, there would have been a running clock. Like, there would.
Correct.
It did.
Happened. Like, I know you got to go. You go out of your way to have respect for how good that franchise has been. They have been. They have been very, very good. But this isn't like they beat us 3 times last year. That's not what it is. This to say I'll believe it when I see it. Well, you did see it. If you watched, it happened.
You could say that if you were picking Baltimore. You know, I'm going with Baltimore because the Browns haven't beaten them in 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay,
fine.
Then you can make that argument. But otherwise, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and I think that, boy, you just think of the holes that they have on that Steelers roster. And again, I think Najee Harris is going to put up big numbers, and I don't think that they're going to be some 4-12 team. But to me, they are not on the level of us and the Ravens, and I obviously agree with Greeny that we are closer. I think we're closer to Kansas City than Pittsburgh is to us.
I think
we'll see.
Zegura said it best yesterday. I'm more worried about the Bengals than I am the Steelers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, especially if Burrow is healthy. I mean, they are going to be a handful to take care of in terms of their offensive weaponry. It's going to be a great division. It's going to be a really fun division. I know Pittsburgh will revel in the idea of proving people wrong, people like us wrong, and that's fine. And I understand, too, from the Browns fan perspective, that hey, let's not be chesty. We all remember the summer of 2019. We were here then. We're here now. It's different. It's different. And every season is going to have to be built differently. But you look at this roster. We just did it with defensive line and linebacker. It's going to be very difficult to make this roster, and there aren't those holes that were there in 2019. There just aren't. So it's interesting. You don't take my word for it. Take Sam Monson's. He'll join us coming up next. We'll ask him where our roster stacks up around the rest of the National Football League. That is coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If your game plan for this season includes buying or selling a home, Howard Hanna Real Estate Services has you covered. Visit howardhanna.com/go Browns today. And with that, we head out on the hotline for a visit with our great friend Sam Monson, lead NFL analyst for Pro Football Focus. Sam, I'm going to share a little secret with you. I said this I can't remember if it was Thursday or Friday on the show. I said if you're looking to kind of have an idea about who we could be picking in the first, I can't remember if it was going into the first round or the second and third round. I said it was going into the second round. Now that I think about it, go to PFF's list of best available linebackers, receivers, defensive tackles, defensive end, those type of guys, and that'll give you a pretty good idea. And sure enough, it played out pretty close to that, my man. So you guys and our front office have a lot of like-minded thoughts. So when we see your grades, we figured it would probably go that way. What do you? And I know there's a lot to love. You graded us an A+, but when you look at what Andrew Berry and the team did, what jumps out first?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Berry just continues to do smart things and make good moves and analytically driven moves that point them in the right direction, or the direction the PFF would be pushing them in if we were running things as well. So obviously we love their draft. Greg Newsome was, I think, a corner in the first round that a lot of people liked, was heading in that direction. But I think in particular, he's such a great scheme fit in Cleveland as well. So not only did they get a really good player at a position that made sense, but they get a guy, I think, that's a great fit within this defense as opposed to some other ones. And then, look, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the second round is obviously one of the steals of the draft. I mean, Adam Schefter reported that he started to slide because of a late medical condition that got thrown up. The teams got spooked by before he was ultimately cleared, and the Browns just took advantage of that. And they got a guy that was number 19 on our overall big board in, midway through the second round, number 52. So that's just outstanding value. But it's also, again, it's a phenomenal scheme fit, because only the Seattle Seahawks last season had more snaps with a linebacker covering the slot than the Browns did. And the Seahawks basically didn't play with a nickel defensive back for a bunch of the season. So that's the only reason they're ahead. And JOK had one of the best grades we've ever seen covering the slot in college, like an actual linebacker lined up over the slot. It's just a perfect fit, again, for this Cleveland defense.
Yeah, and Sam, the injury. So you guys had Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. You guys had him 19. You had Newsome 20. So we get those guys at 26 and 52. And I wanted to drill in because these are the two guys I think we've talked with you about the most, was Greg Newsome and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and we talked to them both in regard to pick number 26. So to get them at 26, to get both of them at 26 and 52, and we have a pretty good feeling here on the program that if Greg Newsome wouldn't have been there at 26, that JOK very likely would have been the pick at 26. So they get both of them, but beyond that, they stay disciplined. Andrew Berry really doesn't have to give up anything. He didn't panic. He just hung and waited, moved up a little bit, gave up an extra 3 to move up and get to 52 and get the guy they wanted. You talked scheme fit, and that's why I want to get in with you because I think that's the real interesting thing. I think there's been this big misconception with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, like what's he going to be? And everyone was scared off by what happened with Isaiah Simmons in Arizona last year. You'd hit it, though. Like, you play this guy at weak side linebacker. You let him run and you let him cover guys in the slot and pass them on. It's pretty straightforward what you do with this guy, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's a big difference between that and Isaiah Simmons from a year ago. Simmons wasn't really playing an NFL position in college. Like, they had him moved all around that defense. He was playing safety for a lot of it. And really the thing was, you're going to have to take him and sort of teach him how to play some kind of conventional position at the NFL level, and that's a big stretch. But there's a pathway from this college overhang linebacker role, this kind of hybrid between linebacker and slot corner that exists at the college level because of those super wide hash marks and the extra space on the field side that doesn't really exist in the NFL, but it's a lot closer, I think, than what Isaiah Simmons was doing. And we've seen guys like Fred Warner come into the league playing the same position and develop into arguably the best sort of off-the-ball linebacker in the NFL right now, or certainly one of them, in part because of those coverage skills he developed playing that overhang position that JOK was playing in college as well. So Yeah, I think you move him immediately, you make him that weak side linebacker, and you take advantage of the fact that he can match up over the slot, and he can cover guys that other linebackers can't, and it gives you this versatility on defense that you wouldn't have if you just had a more conventional linebacker.
And then we go through the draft. You think about Anthony Schwartz, who's probably the fastest guy in the draft and one of the fastest guys in the league. And the one thing that we said as soon as the Kansas City game was over is speed. We did not have anybody who had an ability to take the top off the defense. And I know that he didn't do that a lot at Auburn. I know there's some drop issues. But in terms of just if it's 10 plays a game that he's in the game and 7 of them he just runs a go route, what does that open up for Kevin Stefanski's offense?
Yeah, and I think this is where you can see the smart moves that they're making. I don't love Schwartz as a player, and I think it's a reach where they got him. But even when they're doing things like that, they're picking a skill set that they don't really have on the roster. You know, they're finding a guy that has blazing 4.2 speed that was immediately obvious when you watch his tape, even in the SEC, you know, speed that shows up against elite athletes. And they're bringing that into an offense that doesn't really have that ability right now. They don't have just a burning speedster, a guy that can make those kinds of plays. So I think it's worth a gamble. And you're right, whether you give him those bubble screens, whether you find a few go routes to run him, whether you use him in the slot and send him deep the way a lot of teams are trying to exploit at the moment with, you know, Tyreek Hill has done that, KJ Hamler in Denver and in college was that kind of receiver as well. It's terrifying for a defense because that's something you have to account for every time that guy's on the field because you don't have somebody on defense that can run with him step for step. You need to figure out what you're going to do and make sure that play doesn't beat you over the top.
And Sam, and by the way, follow Sam at PFF_Sam. Check out PFF. I know that you do, folks, but you want to get smarter, check it out. Their draft coverage over the last weekend and the lead up to the draft was just exceptional. They're the best at what they do. As we look through the rest of this draft, and you think about James Hudson, a guy who was at Michigan, converts over to offensive tackle, go look at the Georgia game if you want to see the difference of when he was in the game and when he wasn't. Tommy Togiai, who if he had stayed at Ohio State, could have been in position to be a first-round pick, I think, next year. Fields, LeCount, and Felton as well. When you hear those guys, what jumps out at you? What are some of the things you like, and maybe that you even question if there are questions?
Yeah, I mean, those are, I think, a lot of really good picks as well. You're right, guys like Togiai, I think, can come in and be a dominant force on that defensive line as part of a rotation, and that rotation they've got is extremely strong right now. And then, you know, Demetric Felton, I think, is one of the most intriguing players in the draft. There was a ton of people who absolutely loved the potential that he could bring as this wide receiver running back hybrid. And then his athletic testing was just horrendous. It was like one of the worst sort of testing composite scores you're going to see from anybody. And it didn't matter whether you compared it to wide receivers or running backs. It was just terrible. And I think everybody soured on him from that point. But if you go back and watch the tape, it wasn't causing him problems. Like, that athlete or not, he was still a really difficult player to defend. And to get him, you know, way down in round 6, it's definitely worth a shot for a team like the Browns. If he can come in and be that kind of problem matchup player, it's a steal.
Yeah, it certainly is. We liked it a lot, of course, and it's great to hear what you guys think about it. In big picture, this is the thing that's pretty remarkable, and you guys have been doing this a long time, and you know, we've been here for a while doing this program, and we've been through some lean years, obviously. But it's pretty remarkable what has happened from a roster standpoint when you're smart. Now, some of this goes back to John Dorsey's regime as well with the drafting that was done there. You go all the way back to Sashi and some of the way that he set up this thing. But this is kind of, and you don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but this is kind of NFL roster building 101. It's a bit of a model for what you can do if you're really smart, is it not, Sam?
It is, yeah. I think they've done an awful lot of extremely smart things. And you're right, it has been over an extended period of time. It has been across several different regimes. And they've been, I think, honing this process and getting smarter and smarter and making less bad plays as they've been going on. And we're seeing the rewards of that. In particular, just the Baker Mayfield pick, you know, making sure that, A, you got that one right, and B, you then made sure that he succeeded by rebuilding the offensive line in front of him and getting him some receivers to work with. I think that has completely transformed this team. I mean, Baker stopped the dreaded jersey. You know, the name with all the names that they cycle through at quarterback. Baker has put a halt to that. He's been the answer at quarterback, and part of that is down to him and that he's a good quarterback and a good fit for Cleveland. But part of it is that they've understood that one guy isn't getting it done, and you need to make sure that guy has a platform to work from and within. And coaching changes, the offensive line moves, the receiving moves, it's all coming together right now as one group.
Yeah, it is, and Paul DePodesta has been the one constant, and he's talked about many times about following a process, and I think at times people, there's this nonsense like with football. Well, does he have a football mind? First of all, Paul played in college, but beyond that, what it is just eliminating your margin for error, and it's just keeping you really poised to have a plan, to execute that plan, and eliminate emotion from decisions. And that's something that we're seeing that's played off. And I think it's really interesting what we've done the last 2 years, Sam. I want to get your opinion on this. Last year they said, all right, we're fixing the offense. We're going to sign tackle, sign tight end, draft a tackle. We're going to get that right. And then this year they did the defense. And the focus was almost entirely on the defensive side of the ball. And it's almost like, all right, that's fixed. Now let's fix this. And now you look at this roster, and to me, and I realize I see things through orange and brown colored glasses, to me it's a top 5 roster in the NFL, Sam. Where do you have it?
No, I agree. I think it is. And, yeah, to me, last offseason was all about eliminating variables around Baker Mayfield. He had that struggling season, and we didn't quite know what the problem was. Was this Baker? Was it the fact that the offensive line was so bad it was causing him problems? Was it the scheme? Where were the issues? So their entire offseason was about, well, let's make sure that the only thing left is Baker. Let's fix the offensive line. Let's go hard in free agency, bringing in Jack Conklin. Let's get a first-round tackle. Let's bring in a new coach with a proven offensive system. Let's make sure that the only remaining issue now is Baker Mayfield, and if things still go wrong, we now know it's him. But it also has the side effect of, well, if we fixed everything, then it's done. We're good now because Baker Mayfield can thrive, and that's what happened. And then this season, it was like, well, we reached the end of the season, and the secondary was just getting torched. We need to fix the coverage unit on the back end and make sure that isn't the problem when we run up against these best teams in the NFL, like the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. And again, same thing. They hammered hard in both free agency and the draft. Guys like John Johnson, Troy Hill, and then the guys we've just been talking about in the draft, Newsome and JOK. So they just repeatedly pound on these problem areas until they get it fixed. And I think that's just a really smart way of doing things.
Sam, you think about, and you hit it, and this is something that I think Browns fans need to let soak in a little bit. There's no question that the secondary was the weakest part of this team a year ago. There's no question. And I understand that this is with the caveat of if healthy. But if healthy, you have at safety Johnson, Delpit, and Harrison at the front line, and then at quarter you have Hill, Ward, Newsome, and Greedy at corner.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
an incredible thing from where we were starting a year ago at the end of the year.
It is, and some of these moves were being made towards the end of last season, and they were already trying to make moves in that direction. But then to just keep throwing resources at a problem until it's finished, because the absolute worst case, the worst thing that can happen is you end up, with too many of these good players, which is not exactly a bad problem to have.
Right.
The worst case is you overstock, you overcompensate, and you just end up with a phenomenally good unit that's struggling to get everybody on the field at the same time. But that's a pretty good issue to have on a roster.
Yeah, it really is. Sam, aside from us, who else did you like what they did in the draft? Who did you look at conversely and say, boy, I'm not sure what the plan is here?
I think the Chargers had a great draft. They obviously get their left tackle in the first round. They get a guy that we didn't think would really be there by the time they picked. So I think that was phenomenal value for them, getting Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern with their first pick. And then the second round, Asante Samuel Jr., I think is A, phenomenal player, and B, a fantastic scheme fit again. So I think the Chargers definitely nailed it. And they had a couple of mid-round picks as well that really worked out. Questionable drafts. I still have no idea what the Houston Texans are doing. Drafting a quarterback with their first pick in the draft, which came in the third round, was just a weird thing to do. I'm just not sure what they're building there. For the second year in a row, I think Green Bay had a pretty questionable draft. And then the Raiders, again, continue to just consistently reach on these first-round picks, and they haven't got a good strike rate on those. They've had, 6 first-round picks in the last 3 years, and that group has not been plus play for them.
Yeah, that's the last two you mentioned are hard to wrap your head around, and obviously Aaron Rodgers agrees with you on what the Packers have done, but it's not, they're so steadfast in this. We're not going to do this in the first round. We're going to stick to we don't draft receivers in the first round. Well, it's not like they're getting star defensive players over and over again in the first round. I mean, it hasn't been all hits in the first round with them, and then conversely with the Raiders, it's all head scratcher where that's concerned. Sam, you guys have done just a phenomenal job. We love when we get a chance to talk to you guys and get a little smarter. You going to get yourself a little break here, a little vacation, a little downtime, buddy?
Tiny, couple of days, long weekend. That's it, and then we're back at it.
Right back at it. Well, it was good. It's been fun talking to you guys through the process of the draft, and can't wait to talk to you again next season when we get into it and we start to put this thing into work. You talk to Joe. I'll tell you this right now, Sam, just from inside the building, you're not going to wipe the smile off Joe Wood's face. I'll tell you that, because he's going to get to play defense the way that he wants to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. That is the great Sam Monson, Pro Football Focus. Thanks, Sam. All right, that's good stuff there. Gibby, you look at – I just did that off the top when we were going through it. Johnson, Delpit, Harrison, Hill, Ward, Newsome, Greedy in the secondary. I didn't mention Sheldrick. Didn't mention LeCount. I mean – I understand there's health. There's health. You got to get health. But if you can get some guys in here, you start installing systems. You start getting everybody familiar on the same. That'll be the biggest thing. And I heard Coach on RBS this morning, and I heard him mention that the biggest challenge will be getting everybody to come together. That will be, because you have to build a team. And I think as fans, we think that you just pick up where you left off. That you won 12 games. All right, let's go win 13. But it really. You talk to anybody in the league, it is a start-from-scratch situation every year.
Yeah. At some point, we have begun to turn the page in this building already.
Yeah.
Like, it's moving forward. I think the other fascinating thing, and we keep hearing it with a guy like Anthony Schwartz and, Justin and Fields and some of these other guys, is they have a ton of talent. Now we've got to develop them. And everybody develops at their own rate. But the positive is you've got some really good position coaches that have been pretty high up in coaching rungs around the NFL and have worked for some of the best. But really, I mean, you've now got to develop these guys. And that, I mean, Delpit's the same thing. I mean, Delpit was around for 10 days. Really? When it
Don't
boils
remind
down
me.
to it?
Yeah. I know it. I know he was so good. He was so good, and it is predicated on their health. I mean, it is. I mean, him and Greedy have to be healthy. So, I mean, you have insurance if they're not, but for you to be what you really want to be, them being healthy is a really, really big part of that. So, one guy that knows a little bit about building a championship team is Gerard Cherry. He is a co-host on The Next Level, and we will ask him about building a championship team. He's got 3 rings to show for it. We'll get into that coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. you're obsessing over something like football, it can be a problem. If you're obsessing over gambling, it can be downright dangerous. So do something to take your mind off it, like finding a hobby. If you want some tips, go to keepitfunohio.com for great ways to keep gambling fun. With that, we bring on our great friend, Gerard Cherry, 3-time Super Bowl champion, co-host of The Next Level, which follows us here every single day on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Gerard, how you doing, buddy? A little Cinco de Mayo fun today, huh?
Exactly. So much so I had to get some tacos. And even though Taco Tuesday was, yesterday.
Yesterday. Run it back.
Right, run it
Run it
back.
back,
But I'm
man.
doing well, Bo. Thanks for asking, dog. And I'm like, today is Wednesday, right? Yeah, today is Wednesday.
Yeah, that's why you need to do First Friday. They just forget Wednesday.
Yeah, I love it you said that, dog. First Friday. So today is First Friday. Okay, that'll help me remember.
Yeah, so it's First Friday. Have a cocktail, enjoy yourself. Even if you have too many, all you do is get through one day, and it's another Friday.
Exactly.
So it's a win.
Exactly.
Across the board. You were on a lot of the coverage. You did a great job, as you always do on this front. And this has been a big process here to get to this point. And it's not like there wasn't some pain with it. You win one game in 2 years, you're going to feel it. But when you have a look at this roster now, and you're through free agency, 2 separate free agent classes for Andrew Berry, and now 2 separate drafts. We have to also clearly acknowledge John Dorsey's draft and even Sashi Brown, what they did. It takes a village. But now that you look at what this roster is, it's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. And when you look at this roster, what you say, and I think it's a player's perspective as well, there are no excuses. Yeah, you could say there's some inexperience there, but even then, you were drafted into the National Football League for a reason, and that reason is to make plays, to have production, to change the culture, to instill a culture. And when you look at this roster, you're hard-pressed to say, okay, we can't get the job done here. There's no excuse for no one not to be able to simply do their job and walk away from experience saying, you know what, if I do the best of my job, I can find myself in a situation where I'm having a parade sometime in February.
Yeah, and you know a little bit about that. Gerard, the thing that jumps out to me, and we've kind of stumbled under this over the last couple of days, is how difficult it is going to be to make this roster. I mean, there's going to be guys who have played and contributed in the NFL that are not going to make this roster. And isn't that, you want to be a Super Bowl team or a contender or one of the teams in the mix, that's the first sign, because the competition in camp is going to be fierce to try to make this team.
Oh, that's a telltale sign. And I was commenting to my co-host, Emmett Golden, on The Next Level. I was like,
Sure.
There's a situation here with this roster where if you're an undrafted free agent, do not have your agent send you here unless this is the only choice you got, because the likelihood of you even making the practice squad, let alone the team or the roster, the 53, is remote because it's that stacked. And that certainly, Bo, is a great sign of a really good football team in which you've done things the right way and that you have guys who are going to be contributors under contract for the right amount that you want and need, and you can move from that. But, yes, when you look in the linebacker room in particular, that was the only spot prior to the draft where you said, okay, it's kind of open season. You can bring some guys in. The competition is wide open. The competition is still wide open, but we just don't know who is going to be, 6 spots, 8 guys competing for it, if that, or maybe 4.
Right. Yeah, it's a big difference between – it used to be we were paying attention to who everybody was being cut and see who we could bring in, and that's just not going to be the case this year. It'll be the opposite. When we had Joe Woods on, I want to drill in, because obviously this offseason has been about the defense. It was the focus of free agency. It was the focus of the draft. When we had Joe Woods on, Nathan and I, a couple of weeks ago, he said something that we both took note of. And he said, when he was playing defense the way he wanted to, they were playing over 400 downs in dime. And last year we played 17.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tell you about what Joe Woods had to do last year that he won't have to do this year now with these additions?
Well, it tells you he will be able to run the defense that he's more accustomed to, that he wants to run, and that he has confidence in running. Think about that in any endeavor that you do, what we do. If you get on this microphone half-heartedly, well, Bo, I don't quite really know, and I sound timid and intrepid, how's that going to come off? So if you imagine being a defensive coordinator and you want to be in the 400s and he didn't even get to 1% of where he wants to be as far as calling a game. So think about that. So, of course, he should be like, yeah, if anything, I'm pretty sure you can't tell him nothing right now. Obviously, the season has to play itself out. But if you are him, you are excited. And if you are him, you're really excited about this. Jeremiah Owusu-Kamara. That right there, if I am him, I'm beyond excited, because right there in that player, though he slipped, so to speak, in the draft, You have a guy that which you can do all the things that you want to do. You can hide him. You can confuse the offensive coordinator because you're not quite sure where he's going to be on the defense. So if you're about carrying a dime package or a nickel package, which is essentially what we're talking about, then you have a guy right there from a linebacker spot that could also fall into that situation to where now do you have 7 DBs on the field.
Gerard, so just take us through this. You're going to be playing John Johnson, Grant Delpit, and Ronnie Harrison a lot together.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have JOK in that mix as well.
Mm-hmm.
So from a defense, you're going to have the corner's going to be out there. You may have another linebacker. Who knows how this is all going to get broke down. But from a defensive standpoint, when you have that many guys who are all kind of have similar traits, and the 3 safeties all have similar body builds, how tough does that make it for opposing offenses?
Well, it makes it extremely tough for as passing is concerned. But here's the thing you'll keep hearing people say, and you have to give it consideration. Now you say, okay, what is Derrick Henry going to do in a situation like that where he's bigger than all those guys? Will he just run through them? Now the question becomes, are these guys tough? And based on what we've seen in college, we can certainly say that those guys are tough. And what we've seen with these guys for the safety is concerned in pros, they're tough. So that's really what it comes down to. Are you a safety? Are you a linebacker that's quote-unquote undersized? Do you have the ability to play against guards and tackles blocking you, shedding them, and still making the play and making those tackles? It can be done. I did it. I was basically ahead of my time and that's pretty much what it was. You were a hybrid, and that thing now is the norm. It's so funny how it works itself out, but people finally caught on. Find a safety, find a linebacker that's interchangeable, that's comfortable in the run, comfortable in the pass, comfortable in space, can blitz, can make it happen, can shed blocks, and has the strength to do that, and you got yourself a guy who never has to come off the football field.
Gerard, it's Gibbs.
Gibby!
How are you, my friend? Taking a look at this defense and some of these guys that are drafted toward the back end, Tony Fields, Richard LeCount, maybe some of these guys like a Sheldrick Redwine at the back end that maybe didn't get a lot of time but are really starting to develop. How important is it to have an off-season program? And I think we're all kind of watching and waiting to see, right now it's virtual. But, you're supposed to have a mandatory mini camp in June. You're supposed to have a rookie mini camp next week, but we don't know if that's going to happen or not happen right now based on, the discussions that the NFLPA is having and the league is having. How important is it for some of these guys at the back end of this roster if they want to make this 53-man roster?
Well, it's going to be, one, extremely challenging because simple fact that you have less opportunity to showcase your skills and your talents right there hurts the cause. And with no mini camps taking place due to COVID restrictions and all the things that go along with that, yeah, it's going to be extremely challenging and difficult. But the one thing that you have to take for as your mentality is, I'm just going to weather the storm. There's going to be some type of attrition during the course of a season. Just make sure that take care of my business. Make sure I'm taking care of my body. Make sure that when my opportunity presents itself, because think about Sheldrick Redwine last year. He had a key interception in a game, and he wasn't designated starter, but he got opportunities just for the simple fact that guys got banged up. So your mentality has to be, one, let me make the roster, be it a practice squad, or if I'm primarily a special teams player, let me just do what I have to do to make sure that I'm around for the entirety of the season and start from there. Because you're right, Gibbsy. It is going to be extremely difficult to make this football team, simple fact that the numbers just are against you.
Yeah, they certainly are. And it's interesting. We had Sam Monson on. He was talking about if you have problems, throw assets at them. And we did. We talk about the secondary, how it's been completely remade, and acknowledging that, Delpit and Greedy have to come back healthy for that to be everything you want it to be. Mm-hmm. But I think about defensive line and especially defensive tackle. Tommy Togiai is a dude, Gerard. He is a dude from Ohio State. Marvin Wilson was the #1 defensive tackle in the country coming out of high school and certainly flashed as a sophomore at Florida State, and they had a bunch of stuff off the field, on the field going into his season last year. But the talent's not the issue. Malik McDowell was a 5-star can't-miss guy out of Michigan State, had some issues off the field. Mm-hmm. He's on the right path. We're comfortable with where he is. But from a talent standpoint at defensive tackle, Sheldon Richardson leaves, and now there's all these young dudes that are in there, and they're all fighting for, I think, maybe just one spot. I think there's only 4 defensive tackles that make this roster, Gerard.
Right, and that's a beautiful thing because you have not only that, you have guys that know that, hey, if I don't bring my A game, if I don't bring the intensity on a regular basis, and if I'm not productive, I can be replaced. And that's what you have going, because a lot of times dudes will get comfortable, be they pro athletes, with the idea that, oh, I'm not replaceable. Everyone's replaceable to a degree, unless your name is Tom Brady. Outside of that, though, most guys are replaceable. So with that being said, yes, this defensive line, especially the D tackle spot, should be in a spot where they're saying to themselves, hey, every time I go out there, now you don't want to play scared and worried about being replaced, but you should be playing with your hair on fire because you know that, hey, there's another guy waiting in the wings. And guess what? Outside of Myles Garrett, you can take the same stance with the defensive end spot as well.
All right, Gerard, what's the strongest part of this Browns defense? Now that we're through free agency, now that we're through the draft, and this 90-man group is together in preparation for training camp, where is the defense the strongest?
Oh, it's simple, man. It's the defensive back room. You have 4 guys that can flat out cover and proven that they can cover. Now, obviously, Newsome is going to have to do more proving than anyone else, but you got 4 guys that have the ability to cover. And when you have that working for you, right alone, that gives you an advantage. And then you have safety help, in which you have guys who have experience, can call the defense, know how to run a defense, and have had the captain on their jersey. That matters. So I think right now the strength of the defense is the secondary, in that you got guys that can flat out cover, and you got guys that can flat out hit and get the job done in the open space.
All right, switching to the other side of the football. On offense. You know, we've talked a lot about what the defense has done. We've also talked about the offense running back. You know, everybody, with the exception of losing one swing tackle, we're running everybody back. Mm-hmm. What are the challenges in running it back? Because we've talked about what it means to be in the system for a second year, having the same coaching, having the same playbook, and all that. What are the pitfalls this team could face in trying to run it back with everybody?
Complacency is really the only thing that could be the issue for this team, and that's a mental attitude. If you're going to be complacent, if you think you've arrived, and if you don't think you have to go out there and pay the price, because the one thing that you have to remember, be it you win in a Super Bowl or if you had any type of semblance of success, is that people are going to give you their A game. No defensive coordinator right now is game planning for the Browns, or if they continue to live up the form, is going to say, okay, we can just walk out there and dominate this football team. The offensive line is on fire. The skill positions across the board are on fire. So we have to bring our A game. And right now at this stage of the season, with the schedule being out, guys are thinking about that and know that and mentally preparing themselves to say, okay, when I face the Cleveland Browns, there's no week off, because that used to be the case where, hey, I'm going to take a week off. Not the case anymore. So the biggest thing is not buying into the hype, but actually going out there and proving the hype to be right.
I had 2 for you. I want to get you on JOK on one specific question, but dovetailing off of what you were just talking about, and you talk about complacency, and I don't think that will be the case with this football team because of the people who I think will be the leaders, the Pied Pipers of the organization. On the teams you were on that were successful, that won Super Bowls, what was different about them? What was different about them in camp? What was different about them in the offseason? Was there anything that separated them apart? When did you know that you were on a team that was going to be able to make a run at it?
Well, one, you had the camaraderie, guys with the same goals, same intent, same mindset for the most part. Now, you may have a couple of dissenters, but eventually they'll be rooted out, and you'll figure that out. But really, the main thing is paying the price. Guys working their butts off consistently and holding each other accountable and being hungry, not satisfied with a win. And for example, here's the best example I can give you. Imagine winning a game in which you didn't play that well and it felt like a loss. And you approached it in that mindset that, man, we won that game, but we really lost that game as far as how you felt you performed and your execution, and really having that be the sentiment that week going into practice that like you lost even though you won, and in the win column it says you won the game. When you start having that type of hunger, when you start having that type of drive, when you have guys buying into it on that level and reinforcing it and not having to have the coaches or the GM or the owner come down and speak, but within the locker room guys are saying this and doing things of that nature to hold each other accountable, that's when you know you got something for real. That's when you know you have something that can win multiple football games and take care of business in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. Because think about last year. One to two little plays, and this is how small it is once you get to this level, of not doing the right thing for containment and other technique issues, cost us a game, if you think about it. And those type of things get rooted out during the course of the season because guys are making sure they're doing everything the right way.
Did you know? Did you know in the off season? I mean, what you talked about is stuff that was happening during the season in the regular season. Did you know in camp was that accountability being held as soon as cleats hit the field in July?
Well, here's the funny thing. Like when I got to the Patriots, I got there late, but this is my 5th season in the league, and I commented to my agent at that time. I said, you know what? This is the best team I've ever been around. Now we started out like 1-3 or something like that, and the rest is history. But I could sense and feel then that it was really a team, and that guys were bought into for the right reasons and really enjoyed working and being beat down and going into the fight and the fray together and coming out and had a goal in mind. Yeah. You could sense it and feel it.
Yeah, it's there, and hopefully it's there for this team. I wanted to circle back with you on JOK. Is too much being made about his position? I mean, isn't he just a weak side linebacker who can run and cover? I think of Warner, certainly with San Francisco, that's a high standard, obviously. But he weighs more than Darius Leonard does, Gerard. I don't know if people realize that. He weighs more than Leonard does.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If you look at Hall of Famers, where did they land? Where did they get put in a place to where their skill set could be totally maximized and utilized to the best of their ability? He's in a place to where I'm pretty sure defensive coordinator Joe Woods is losing his mind right now because this is the perfect fit for what he wants to do. I see him, and I had this conversation with someone, and forgive me for not giving him credit, but I totally agree with him. He could be our version of Troy Polamalu, as far as just running around making and creating havoc every chance he gets because the defense will allow him to do that. And the scheme will. So that's why you should be excited, and that's why it makes sense because he landed in a perfect spot to utilize and take advantage of his skill set, and that you have a defensive coordinator who has no problem with having a bunch of what we call little guys on the football field 24/7.
Yeah, I remember Paul saying in one of the press conferences at the end of last week that Newsome was kind of scheme agnostic. He could play in any scheme and be successful. But the Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was scheme specific. He fits what we want to do exactly. And so you backing that up as well, my friend. What do you got on the program today?
We're going to chop a lot of things up. We got to talk about some Cavaliers, and obviously we'll continue to talk about the Cleveland Browns and the excellent draft choices and what the season's looking like. And also we have to delve into this because for some reason it's getting a lot of play. Did you guys talk about this today? This whole Aaron Rodgers trade for Baker Mayfield. Saw a lot of it today on ESPN. I'm like, I don't know about that.
Look, I get it because it's Baker is. If you are a segment producer, I've talked about this a lot, Gerard. If you're a segment producer on a national show, Baker Mayfield is a lightning rod. If you put him in a conversation, it gets attention. So I get it, and I think he gets it. And honestly, I think he likes it. I mean, he went on coward. I think he likes it, So
I don't know if you like people saying, "Well, get rid of you and bring in Aaron Rodgers because they'll make a better run to the Super Bowl."
No,
he
don't like that. I don't think, but I think he likes the chip. I think he likes people doubting him. I do think that I think he enjoys that a little bit. Great talking to you, my friend, and always good when we get to share a little bit of the airwaves. Look forward to the next level coming up next. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Thanks, dog.
All right, that's our good friend Gerard Cherry. Next level coming up here in about 40 minutes from now. Lance Zierlein, Bucky Brooks discuss Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's fall in the draft and why it happened. And at the bottom of the hour, Nathan's conversation with our boss man, Paul D. Podesta. You have that to look forward to, which is nice. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Social Security benefit has been denied. Call the disability lawyers at 1-800-ELK-OHIO. Elk and Elk, a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Obviously, the Aaron Rodgers stuff continues to circulate, and Mike Garafolo with some interesting details on what Rodgers and what has been going on behind the scenes in Green Bay. Let's go ahead and have a listen to that.
Yes. What do I make of it? I make that it is accurate. I mean, it's been one of the rumors that's been kicking around the last couple of days. Mike Silver and I were discussing it the other day, and I said, well, I don't have anybody that heard it or saw it firsthand, but, it's something that's been mentioned. And, yeah, you're right, Andrew. I mean, it's Jerry Krause who dismantled that Bulls dynasty, but it's also Jerry Krause who built that Bulls dynasty. I mean, that's a big part of the story being left out here. But it does show the disdain, I think, for Brian Gutekunst's moves and what he's done as general manager. I don't know if it's a personal thing, but at least what he's done in his job that Aaron Rodgers has for him. And I'll add one more thing to this, because now it's all coming out, right? Now that the story's out there, everybody, oh, this happened and this happened and this happened. What I'm told from multiple sources is that Aaron Rodgers was telling the Packers' prospective free agents, basically, before you make any decision, I'm probably not going to be here, right? And to the point where he was telling them, I'm told, all the way back to the beginning of last season. Now, that was in the wake, the months after the team had drafted Jordan Love. Did they believe that was the case or take that into consideration as they made their individual decisions all along the way? Well, David Bakhtiari, who's about as close to Aaron Rodgers as it gets, signed an extension with the team in November. So I think, like a lot of us, the players were hearing that saying, yeah, he's upset, he doesn't love it here, but he'll be here come next season. Well, we don't know right now. And those players who decided on their future decided to make the decisions on their own futures for their own personal well-being rather than whether they thought that Aaron Rodgers was still going to be here. And by the way, those destination spots that he would like to get to, I'm told
5 seconds.
All, if not, or most, excuse me, if not all of those when they were hearing this stuff from Aaron Rodgers back in the fall.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was trying to think of free agents, Gibbe, who were linked to them last year in the lead-up. The only guy I could think of that was, I remember Antonio Brown, but, I mean, it seemed like he was going to Tampa no matter what. I can't recall anybody
they're
else.
usually not big in the free agent market.
No, they're not. So it's, it seems to me like obviously this very clearly goes back to the draft. It does. You do get the feeling that that from Rodgers' standpoint, and whether there was or not, from his standpoint, the feeling was, I'll be a good soldier this year, a.k.a. last year, and then I'm done. And you wonder if there were conversations that he had between himself and Gutekunst, the general manager, and maybe they, were there any conversations where people assured him, hey, we'll look to move off of you, and now he feels betrayed on that and is trying to force the hand. It does seem that he was good soldier for a year, and now I'm good. It's an ugly situation in an organization that has done this before with Favre, but I think people are so much more sympathetic to them then because of the game. Favre was retiring almost every offseason towards the end there. You never know if he was coming back or not. This isn't that. It's just something. It's not becoming of that organization. It's a tough look.
It's not a good look. I know Zegura hates that term, but it's nothing looks good on either side. It's become so public, and you just feel like when someone reports something, it's like, okay, well, are you getting that from Rodgers people or are you getting that from the Packers people?
Yeah.
Like, they're picking a side, and you really don't know what to believe at this point. But none of it's good. None of it. If you're a Packer fan, you're not sleeping well at night right now. And it comes down, a week from today, the NFL schedule comes out. The schedule makers are probably going, I hope this gets resolved so we know one way or the other how many games to give the Packers on TV.
Yeah. The other thing, that's a great point because you're trying to sort those things out. That they're a draw anyway, but with him, it's a totally different ballgame. This is now the third big name quarterback that this has happened to this offseason. Now, Deshaun Watson's plea to get out of Houston was just derailed by his off-field situation, which is cumbersome to say the least. But Russell Wilson, remember that? Russell Wilson's going to be traded. He's done in Seattle. He's still there. I mean, this is not the AAUification of the NFL like we've seen in the NBA, where players demand everything. There's no guaranteed money. If any position could do it, it would be the quarterbacks. But even they are finding it very difficult to force their way out, that the teams still hold so many of the cards. Wilson was one that was interesting. Rodgers certainly could not play, but are you going to live $38 million on the table and however many years left of your career? I think if Watson wouldn't have had the off-field stuff, he was the most intriguing one because of his age. He really maybe could have forced their hand. But these other guys, they don't really have a whole lot of options.
No, which is funny because, it's not like you can just go pluck another good quarterback off a tree. You would think that the players would start to get a foothold, but that is not the case. And the NFL will roll on with you or without you.
Yeah, they certainly will. We were talking about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah with Gerard and what to do with him, and we talked about it being a perfect scheme fit. This was from the NFL Network, Lance Zierlein and Bucky Brooks, talking about why JOK fell as far as he did in the draft. Let's have a listen.
I mean, this, I think, might have been the biggest fall of all. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Lance, and him lasting all the way to the late second round when the Browns were more than happy to snatch him up.
So I don't have an answer for this one. I really don't. I don't know. I put on Twitter, and I even put @OldTakes expose. So I added them. I said, look, save this if you want, but there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be very sad they passed on Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the same way the teams are sad that they passed on DK Metcalf. This is, to me, a guy that has tremendous upside, some of the best upside of anybody in the entire draft. He's lightning fast. He's very physical and aggressive. The instincts are not fully formed. I get that. And you may say, well, he's kind of caught between linebacker and safety. But what I know is he can rush the passer effectively. He can really cover. I mean, he's got all the different traits and tools that people wanted. I think he has the skill to become what people wanted Jabril Peppers to become, and only in a longer, faster frame. So I'm a fan of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I know he's only in the low 220s, but Darius Leonard plays 218 to 225. So I don't know why he fell, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really a mystery, but I will say the Cleveland Browns cleaned up because he is a fantastic playmaker. And when we think about the way the game is evolving, having someone on the second level that's that hybrid linebacker safety is a necessity. He fills that role. He's nasty. I think he's a perfect fit for what the Browns want to do defensively, particularly in an AFC North where you have some talented playmakers on the other side of the ball.
I almost wonder if he just gets stuck, like Isaiah Simmons last year and how celebrated he was, and it just never quite came together. Seemed like he came on a little bit toward the end of the year. You guys talk about those hybrid players or maybe the twin. What was our guy's name? Buchanan, right? Deontay, that was in Arizona. Another one where it was like, is he a safety?
Deion Buchanan.
With Deion Buchanan, Hassan Reddick, Arizona, and now you've got Isaiah Simmons. Yeah. So,
10 seconds.
Tried to do it, and with limited success so far.
Yeah, so that may be, people are just afraid. You mentioned Jabril Peppers, again, trying to realize that potential.
All right, good stuff from the guys there. I'll tell you what, I can't help. I lit up pretty good when Gerard retold the story of somebody saying, let him do what Palomala did. Like, that gets you pretty excited when you talk about just a heat-sinking missile that JOK could be in this defense. Can't wait to see him out there in that 28 running around. Coming up next, one of the guys responsible for all of this is Paul DePodesta. He went one-on-one with Nathan. We have that for you coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily. Beau Bishop here. The pick is in. Perfect Power Wash, the consensus #1 in professional power washing. Their proven process will safely and effectively neutralize the algae, mold, and mildew currently wreaking havoc on your home's exterior and provide a league-leading defense against further damage. Whether it is your siding, concrete, deck, patio, your roof, PPW has the skills and the experience to make an immediate impact. In just 5 minutes over the phone, the professionals at Perfect Power Wash going to answer all your questions, provide a free quote, schedule your service. Do not drop the ball. Make the right call. Go with the pros of Perfect Power Wash. Appointments are filling up fast this time of year. You know they are, so schedule your service today. Call the pros now, 888-860-WASH. That's 888-860-WASH, and use the promo code BEAU to save 10% on your Perfect Power Wash. Time for an interview I've been looking forward to. Nathan, Paul DePodesta, the architect certainly of the Browns way and what that's all about. This is a fun conversation. Let's have a listen.
Paul, first off,
you're down.
Congratulations. I'm sure this has been a long process. You think about the lead up, and then it's over in a flash. But it doesn't probably feel like a flash. 3 days of grinding it out here. 8 new players on the Cleveland Browns, just top level. What did you guys think of this, how the board fell, and what you were able to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, super excited overall. Like you said, it's a 3-day grind, but really it's about a 10-month grind for a lot of people, and certainly the last 3 months in particular, just trying to get the board together. And I'll be honest, I think the board fell about as well as it could have for us. I mean, you never get every player you want. There's some other players we would have loved to have had a crack at, but from round 1 through round 6 with 8 picks, it went about as well as we could have hoped.
Well, let's start with round 1. Greg Newsome, the cornerback out of Northwestern. You guys wanted to get some more depth there, get some more talent in that cornerback room, and somebody you targeted early in this process, as you had noted. When you saw that he was there, you jumped on it. What does he bring to this defense, and how happy were you to start the first round that way?
Yeah, really excited to get Greg. Long, fast, and smart. Pretty good combination at corner. And it's something we had talked about a lot in terms of our secondary. I mean, our defense in general, we want to be able to rush and cover. We have a lot of those elements already, but we think, Greg brings a lot more to the table, especially because he's almost scheme agnostic. He can play anything. He's long enough to play press. He's got enough awareness to play in zone. He's got the ball skills to play off man. So that there's just a lot he can do, and we can play just about everything with him out there.
So while you were looking at the board in the first round, thinking about people that might fall, a number of names I'm sure were there. Greg Newsome clearly at the top of the list at 26, but Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was also somebody you guys were talking about potentially being in play at pick number 26. Now, Newsome was there. That's the pick. So here we go to day 2, Paul, and this is the question I am so curious about. You guys ultimately ended up trading from 59 to 52. How were those discussions? This is somebody clearly you wanted. I saw how happy you guys were. You didn't even have a scenario in which you ended up with Newsome and Owusu-Koramoah in your many, many simulations that you went through to prepare for this. No way, no how. We heard that quote as well, and yet it did happen. So when you guys are in that room and you're saying, this is okay, maybe this is possible, what were those discussions like? Are you talking about, do we go into the 30s to get him? Do we go into the 40s to get him? And ultimately you do get your man at 52.
So, as you mentioned, we go through an incredible number of scenarios over the last couple of months to try to prepare for almost anything that could happen. Clearly, we didn't prepare for anything, or everything that could possibly happen. But we were prepared for the idea that a guy we really liked in the first round could slip into the second. And what would we do under that scenario? So we had prepared extensively for that scenario. We just didn't know who the player was going to be, or if there even was going to be one that would be like that this year. But when Jeremiah was still there, and it was pick 35, pick 40, 42, it was the first time AB and I really started talking about it. And again, we had prepared months ago. A lot of other people had done some great work. Andrew Healy, Ken Kovash in particular, to the point where we knew that right around 50 was our sweet spot, where we thought the price made sense for the type of player we were going to go get. And we were trying to look at our draft as a whole, and we didn't want to give up any picks, but we felt like that pricing was right for that level of player. And at that point, it was calling around trying to get somebody to say yes, and that finally happened at 52.
So there were some calls, and people say, not interested in what you're selling right now. But then at 52, you get that. And as you said, all you do is move out one of your 2 third-round picks and put that into the 4th round. And he made some moves there to even get an asset in 2022 ultimately. But so that was kind of what you guys were looking to do. Not have a huge deviation from where you were and the number of players you could acquire in this draft, but still get your guy. Boy, I'll tell you what, that takes a lot of nerve. That takes a lot of patience and fortitude, I think, to watch that without sweating it and feel like, maybe he's going to get away from us. That's the poise that we talk about. That's one of the big P's that you guys have.
Well, that's Andrew Berry's poise, and his patience as we go through it. I mean, the good news was for us, there were some other players on the board that we also really liked. I'm sure that was the case for a lot of the other teams. So if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. We were going to be happy with what we got at 59, but we were obviously thrilled to be able to move up to 52 and get Jeremiah.
So we know what he can do from an athletic standpoint. I'm curious to hear you talk about, what you see his skill set, and I think we're going to get a theme here, speed. There was a lot of speed added in this draft by the Cleveland Browns. But when we talked to him last night after he was drafted, he immediately hit us. He's like, the 3 pillars, smart, tough, and accountable. I said, you're a quick study as well, clearly, Jeremiah. You've got the mantras down right there. But what does he bring in addition to what he obviously has upstairs? What does he bring physically and how you see him can help this Cleveland Browns team?
Sure. Right. I told you, Greg Newsome was somewhat team agnostic in terms of he can play anything. I would tell Jeremiah is a perfect scheme fit for us, in what we want to do defensively, especially with the linebacker spot. As you mentioned, he can really, really run. He can really cover. He can play downhill against the run. He's an aggressive tackler. He makes his presence felt when he gets around the ball. So he really embodies everything we want a linebacker to be.
And you talked about everybody's running to the whiteboard. They're so excited, drawing things up for him. I mean, Joe Woods right now, I don't know if Joe Woods is handing out Rolexes or handing out isotoner gloves like Dan Marino used to do back in the day for you guys, but he's got to be pleased with the way this offseason has gone on that defensive side of the ball. Before we even drafted today, Paul, you could put together with guys, and some of them were here, for example, Delpit, Williams, Billings, who had opted out, that didn't play a snap. You could put together a legitimate nickel defense on the field of guys who did not play a snap for the Browns a year ago. That's got to make Joe very happy.
I think so. He came into my office last night right after we got Jeremiah, and he asked me whether or not he needed to take a pay cut. No, I think he's thrilled. I think our whole defensive staff is thrilled.
And now you turn your attention to the offense. For the first time this offseason, round number 3, Anthony Schwartz, the wide receiver from Auburn. And this one, speed. I think you can say it a few times. Speed, 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 speed. A track star. The guy's won gold medals. He's been the Gatorade Track Athlete of the Year. Obviously, that was a dimension you said you wanted to add to that room. You get it in Schwartz.
Yeah, like you said, world-class speed. But he's also, a player that we think's got a lot of room to continue to grow. They used him differently at Auburn probably than we're going to use him, and Kevin I think will do a great job using him in lots of different ways. We were obviously very pleased with our offense overall last year, so it's not like we felt like we needed to add something, to that room to make it better or anything like that. But this is a different dimension, and it's one we didn't have last year. So it'll be a nice tool to put in the toolbox for Kevin and Alex Van Pelt.
And when you have a roster as complete as ours, let's even look at the wide receiver room as complete as ours. And as you mentioned, last year, tons of success. Odell comes back. You've got Jarvis, Hollywood Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who showed a lot, Kadarius Hodge, et cetera, all back. And you have a great wide receiver coach in Chad O'Shea. Does that make you say, okay, we found an elite trait here that nobody else in this draft possessed. We have time to bring him in, learn our system, get great coaching. He's only 20 years old. And then maybe we have the opportunity to groom him into something bigger. But in the meantime, you put him on the field for a few snaps, everybody's going to know where he is every time he comes on the field because that kind of speed can kill you in one play.
There's no doubt. I mean, it's lightning fast. I mean, he immediately becomes the fastest guy on our roster without much of a question. We have a lot of guys who could really run, but he's going to be right at the top of the list. So, no, like I said before, I think it just gives us a different dimension. We looked at a bunch of the fast receivers in this draft that there are 4 or 5 of them that we looked at very seriously, but at the end of the day, we felt like Schwartz was the best fit for us.
It'll be exciting to see what we can do, get those jet motions going and all that fun stuff that I'm sure Kevin Stefanski is going to cook up with Anthony Schwartz as we turn our attention now to day 3. And Depot, I got to let you know, our own Jason Gibbs right here in one of the mocks had James Hudson, the tackle from Cincinnati, the Browns. So maybe producer/scout. I don't know what's in his future, but he was attracted to his movement skills, and I have a feeling in a zone scheme, that's what you guys were attracted to as well.
Yeah, that's impressive. We're going to have to have him in the room next year. Great feet. Really good athlete, great feet. He's also got some punch to him. He also just hasn't played the position for very long, quite frankly. He went to college, went to Michigan as a defensive lineman, made the switch to the offense, and then ultimately transferred to Cincinnati to get more snaps. But we were really impressed with what we've seen so far. But another guy that we think has a lot of upside, I know Bill Callahan's really excited to work with him, and we think that could be a great pairing, in terms of what he could potentially be.
Absolutely, and as a guy who, listen, when he made the transition, said, I need to watch Joe Thomas tape, so had the Cleveland Browns, kind of those bloodlines already. He was watching it, and now he'll have the opportunity, I'm sure, to talk to Joe. Staying on day 4, Tommy Togiai, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State, strong in the middle. When you have all those fast athletes that you guys have brought in on the back end of this defense, you need somebody up front to clog things up so they can run free and make plays. Is that what Togiai gives you?
Absolutely. Yeah, we really like the way Togiai plays. We think he plays with fire. He's very strong. He also plays an attacking style, in the defensive front, which is exactly what we want. We want guys to be penetrating and aggressive, play uphill or play downhill, really, from their perspective, and disrupting the backfield. And we feel like he's a perfect fit for that.
Tony Fields was a tackling machine at both Arizona and West Virginia. Another one of those I would call maybe smallish linebacker, 6'1", 220, but it seems like that's a type you guys like, athletes who can go sideline to sideline.
Yeah, he can really, really run and has a real nose for the ball. I mean, he's tackled everywhere he's been, plays very aggressive. He plays probably above his size, I would say. But again, I think we want those guys who can just close down space all over the field, and he can do that.
What attracted you guys to Richard LeCount, the safety out of Georgia? Obviously, big-time program in the SEC, and was productive in his college career.
Yeah, very productive, very smart, very instinctual, very good ball skills, can make plays on the ball. He probably got knocked a little because he's slightly undersized, but he makes his presence felt. He'll hit you, if you come over the middle. But we really like the entire package of him. We think he's just a really, really good, sound football player.
And then the last pick, your 8th in this draft, Demetric Felton, running back, wide receiver, returner, electric with the ball in his hands from UCLA.
Yeah, slippery, very slippery, and can do lots of different things. We can use him out of the backfield. We can use him, split out, and like you said, he could potentially be a returner in special teams. So lots of different things that he could potentially do if we get the ball in his hands.
Well, Paul, we certainly appreciate the time, the insights that you've shared with us as well, and you have earned certainly a much well-deserved rest after this draft for the Browns. And I know you guys have undrafted free agents that you're going to be working on, so it never really stops. But congratulations on going out, executing your plan, and getting guys that you didn't even think it was possible to come out of this draft with.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been fun.
Yeah, it certainly has. It's been fun to be a part of all this, and all the fun is just beginning. Can't wait to get this season underway. Still so much more to come. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, it is a Cinco de Mayo First Friday. I'll give you a couple of tequilas for the kids out there that I enjoy a great deal. First of all, I'm an añejo guy when it comes to tequila. So I'm not a silver, I'm an añejo guy of pop. So 3 that I think are just spectacular. Clase Azul is incredible. Tough to find, certainly in the añejo, and you're going to pay for it. Don Julio, it makes a very good añejo. You can get that almost anywhere. And probably my favorite, it's rare to find around here, very rare to find, but it is in Ohio, is Grand Centenario añejo. Just excellent, excellent. You will enjoy any of those. Look, you can enjoy most of them. There's a lot of guys in the game now. LeBron's in the game. Clooney's in the game. The Rock's in the game. Patron still makes a good añejo, so there's a lot of them out there for you. But those are some that you certainly can enjoy on your Cinco de Mayo. And those ones in the añejo, you don't need those are. Put them on the rocks with a lime squeeze, and you're good to go, kids, on that front. Enjoy that. Gibby, we're back tomorrow. We got Gribbs on. John Greco going to join us as well, and we'll continue on here on the program. Good job out of you, my friend, as always. The next level is coming up next. Thanks for listening, everybody.